Republican Senator James Risch is making the case for something Washington rarely agrees on: the need for an international agreement to regulate plastics. In a moment that cuts across party lines, Risch argues that unchecked plastic pollution isn't just an environmental issue, but an economic and national interest problem for the United States, with global consequences the U.S. can't afford to ignore.
And I'm going to start with you, Mr. Brooks. I want to talk about a subject that generally isn't in our wheelhouse, but as everybody knows, every treaty that the United States attempts to enter into has got to go through this committee, regardless of what the subject matter is. It isn't necessarily international, something that we deal with ordinarily. And the one that I want to focus on right now is something that's really, I think, flying below the radar nationally, but is talked about up here to a degree, and that's the effort to reach an agreement, international agreement regarding plastics. Are you familiar with that effort, I assume?
I am, Senator.
What can you tell us about the current status of the negotiations, and anything you can shed light on what the final product may look like? As you may or may not know, I wrote a letter to the administration expressing the reservations I have hearing the discussion, the international discussion, that really looks to upstream as opposed to a cyclical solution of the problem. Your thoughts?
Thank you very much for that question, Chairman Risch. I have not read your letter, but if confirmed, I certainly look forward. In fact, maybe later tonight, I will go home and take a look for it. What I can tell you is the plastics negotiations have been a very long and unfolding international drama. We just heard word that there is a new chair for the INC elected from Chile. The United States, this administration looks forward to working with them to work towards consensus on an agreement that protects U.S. interests and ultimately solves the plastic pollution problem. Again, largely drawing on U.S. innovation, our success with waste management, and ultimately ensuring that products that the American people have come to rely on in their daily lives are available and cost effective.
We appreciate that. First of all, the plastics issue certainly deserves the attention that it's getting. The resolution of it is incredibly important to the plastics industry, not only in America, but in the world. Can you talk briefly about there's kind of two sides of the debate, as I understand it. One is viewing the upstream side, and the other is looking at the recycling side. Can you talk briefly about that conflict and whether it's a resolvable conflict or how you view that?
Yes, that's correct, Senator. So you have a group of countries on the one hand that are looking to establish a global regulatory framework that would seek to ban certain products or certain additives or place caps on the amount of plastics or certain additives in products. We think this is a really bad approach. The United States manufacturing industry, 26% of it is plastics. And so we, as you all know, and many of you have been forceful champions for advanced manufacturing and rebuilding America's manufacturing base, we need to hold on to as much of that industry as possible. And America has shown that we can manage plastic waste well, and we can encourage that management style in other places and raise standards where they're currently lacking.
Well said, Mr. Brooks. I hope you'll take that argument to the table when you're talking about this on the international stage, and we look forward to seeing if we can't get some kind of a legitimate treaty agreement regarding this. So thanks so much. Senator Shaheen.
Republican Senator James Risch is making an argument that doesn't usually dominate conservative talking points, that a binding international agreement to regulate plastics is not just desirable, but critical for us interests. At first glance, this sounds like classic global environmental governance, the kind of thing Republicans often reject as overreach or a threat to us sovereignty. But Risch's framing is notably different. He isn't talking about ideology. He's talking about consequences. Plastic pollution has become a global crisis that doesn't respect borders. The United States can regulate domestically all it wants, but if other countries continue producing, dumping, and exporting plastic waste at massive scale, American industries, coastlines, waterways, and taxpayers still pay the price, from fisheries and tourism to shipping lanes and public health. The economic damage is real and growing. Risch's core argument is simple. Without international rules, the U.S. ends up competing in an unfair system. American manufacturers face environmental standards and cleanup costs, while foreign producers flood global markets with cheaper, dirtier plastic. That's not free trade. That's a race to the bottom. This is where the issue becomes strategic. Plastics are deeply embedded in global supply chains, energy markets, and manufacturing. Countries that dominate plastic production also gain leverage over packaging, consumer goods, and industrial inputs. If the U.S. stays on the sidelines of global regulation, it cedes influence over how those rules are written and who benefits from them. Risch is also acknowledging a political reality Washington often avoids. Unilateral action doesn't work. Plastic waste doesn't stop at national borders. It moves through oceans, rivers, and trade routes. That means solutions that rely solely on domestic regulation are guaranteed to fall short. But this is where the tension comes in. And international plastics agreement raises legitimate concerns. Who enforces it? How do you prevent it from becoming another bureaucracy that punishes us businesses while letting major polluters slide? And how do you ensure it doesn't morph into a backdoor climate mandate disconnected from real world manufacturing realities? Risch appears to be walking a careful line, supporting global coordination while insisting that any agreement protect American competitiveness, respect national sovereignty, and hold all countries to the same standards. That's a tall order, especially when trust in international institutions is already thin. There's also the political risk. Environmental regulation, even when framed as economic protection, is still radioactive in parts of the GOP base. Industry groups worry about compliance costs. Conservatives worry about precedent. Progressives worry the agreement won't go far enough. In other words, everyone is skeptical, which might be why this issue is finally getting serious attention. What makes this moment notable is that it shows how environmental policy is being reframed as national interest policy. This isn't about symbolism or virtue signaling. It's about whether the U.S. wants a seat at the table as global rules are written or whether it wants to deal with the fallout after the fact. Because one way or another, plastics will be regulated. The only real question is who sets the terms, and Risch is warning that if the United States doesn't help shape those rules now, it will be forced to live under them later with far less leverage and far higher costs. For a Congress often paralyzed by partisanship, this debate may signal something bigger, a recognition that global environmental problems are now inseparable from economics, trade, and security, whether Washington likes it or not.